Welcome back to the Unfinished Podcast. Today, we're diving deep into what it truly means to learn, grow, and become a better human, both on and off the mat, court, field, stage, whatever domain you're in. We're joined by an incredible individual who embodies anti-fragility, mastery, and the power of self-discovery. Our guest today is Erin Herle from the intense world of Jiu Jitsu, where she earned her black belt through sheer determination, to navigating major life transitions. Erin's journey is a powerful testament to the human spirit. After achieving significant success in combat sports, including an amateur MMA fight, Erin pursued a master's in sport and performance psychology and became a certified mental performance consultant, an expert in helping others unlock their full potential. In this conversation, we're going to unpack the transformative power of martial arts and how the seemingly brutal environment can become a place of profound psychological safety and community, the crucial difference between perceived and actual mental toughness, and why embracing self-compassion is a game changer for high performers, the concept of me search versus research, exploring how personal experience fuels deeper learning and understanding, and finally, the vital role of environment and relational dynamics regarding skill development and overall well-being, both in sports and in everyday life. Erin's transparency and insight offer a unique perspective on navigating life's challenges, proving that regardless of your background, you possess the capacity to adapt, excel, and truly thrive. Her story reminds us that failure isn't the end, but a vital data point on the path to becoming your best self. Let's dive in and stick around for an incredible, honest, and insightful conversation with Erin Herle. All right. So, Erin, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down, talk with, somebody who's just kind of trying to make it, go through his own journey, and just, talk all things, learning, development of skill, and honestly, just becoming a better human. So tell me a little bit about yourself and where you're coming from.
Yeah, so right now I'm in Niagara Falls, Canada. I'm from Los Angeles. I'm a Valley girl. I grew up in Chatsworth, and I started jiu-jitsu in 2009. I had kind of been in like the hardcore music scene, and then some of the guys were starting to train. There's a little overlap there, I guess, in the niches and the subcultures. So I started jiu-jitsu. I got hooked 3 months in. I was competing. And I was like, I'm going to make this my life. And kind of did that for my entire 20s. Went to all the major tournaments and did pretty well. But I was also like kind of inconsistent. And I was constantly interested in the way that people's minds work. So I almost actually wrote like a book like years and years ago on like the champion mindset. But I didn't know a lot then. I know a lot more now. So after jiu-jitsu, I went to MMA and I did an amateur MMA fight, and then the pandemic happened, and it was like, okay, so things are kind of changing, right? And eventually I decided to go get my master's, which I never thought I would because I was diagnosed with ADHD at 22 years of age. And it was a fully online program. So I did it in 2 years. I earned my master's in sport and performance psychology. And then I did my mentorship hours, and I got and took the exam, and I earned the certificate for certified mental performance consultant. So that is my full title. And if you want to go even more mouthful, it's from the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. So they consider it the gold standard of mental performance coaching, which has been hard to carve out in terms of a career, but that's kind of where I'm at now, which is non-clinical. So I don't, if obviously there's a lot of overlap. A lot of my clients have therapists on the side, but I will refer if I felt like it was going to be clinical, but I work in the performance domain. So there's a lot of freedom involved, and it's been really fun. So, I mean, I have the, jiu-jitsu black belt, and now I'm certified mental performance consultant, and most of my clients are, surprise, combat sports athletes.
Wow. You've been through a lot. What brought you to, Toronto, right?
Yeah, it's like an hour and a half
Yeah.
south of Toronto, yeah.
So, okay, so what brought you from LA to
So,
or Niagara Falls,
yeah.
Niagara, sorry. That's right, Niagara.
So I was traveling the world doing seminars and just like doing the grind life and all that. Um, and there was a guy in my DMs who was just like sending me memes and stuff, which is like the memes of communication. It's the way to my heart, I guess. But there's so we pursue. I ended up pursuing a relationship over the last 5 years, got married, got my permanent residency, um, and then he got a girlfriend. So that's where we're at now. um, so now I've just 2 weeks ago moved back to Niagara. I went to LA to recover because separation, divorce, all of those things
Yep.
are incredibly hard. So I went back to my mom's to kind of just try to get my nervous system under control, and then I decided, I built up a really cool community here, and I would hate for that to go to waste, to just go, no, just gonna move away and never see them again. So yeah, I have my own place. I'm now helping instruct at Niagara BJJ, which is really nice because it's walking distance from my place and I don't have a car yet. So I'm very transparent, obviously, about my life. And I think it helps people to identify and be relatable, but also to know that, like, regardless of what I've either accomplished or gone through, like, I'm still afflicted with the same human condition that everyone else is. So I like to just be human a lot. Um, but yeah, I'm in a transition and the world is my oyster.
I love it. I love it. No, I appreciate you being so open and transparent, is because that authenticity is so rare nowadays in this modern world, because a lot of people now, with you got artificial intelligence, which is a major thing in the world, and people are like, who are you? And like, we don't know who you are. So I really appreciate you being so open and transparent, and kind of what drew me a little bit. I kind of got a little glimpse of that, just being a follower of yours on Instagram and whatnot, and just kind of like drew me to you, and like very curious about how your outlook is on, this whole thing we call life. And right now, like you said, that you're in a transition. I'm kind of in a transition myself. Like, I'm unemployed. I've been unemployed for 3 months now, going on 4 months now. So I'm just kind of figuring things
Mhm.
out, building something from the ground up and seeing what happens with it. Um, and I mean, I'm very lucky that I have my wife and everything like that. She's kind of been my rock with all of this and just helping me support all everything. But so when you were, you started out in the music scene, and then you had some friends that trained BJJ and all
Mhm.
that stuff. And I'll be completely frank, I am the furthest thing away from the martial arts world. And it's kind of funny that I've had quite a few guests on this podcast who are of that world. So, but I'm just fascinated with it because they've adopted a lot of this ideology and theory of skill development that I've been talking about. But and you competed so quick,
Mhm.
3 months after you started. Just kind of tell me, like, how all that progressed. How long did it take for you to get your black belt and everything?
So funny because I did not do sports. Sports was not my thing. I thought, I'm not an athlete. I don't have an athletic family. Like, we don't do turkey trot runs, on Thanksgiving. Like, we're not that type of people. And I would look at like, I had Girl Scouts. And so Girl Scouts was more, we're going to get together after school and do activities and like learn how to tie knots and stuff, and do like, code flags and stuff. Um, I didn't have too much of an influence of being an athlete. And so when I started training, I didn't look at it as like a sport. I had seen the competition first and I didn't sign up until a year later. I was really insecure. I was really nervous, like, who am I to try this? Like, I think I have the picture actually, it came up recently of after my first class, I had a bruise on my arm and I was showing it off, but I had acrylic nails, and I'm like, not that I was ever like a huge girly girl, but it just so happened that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But the drastic, difference between, fighting people and having nails, like it just, um, and so when I finally went in there, I felt like, okay, this is really cool stuff and it's really hard. Like I'm not getting it the first try. But at the same time, there are other things that feel natural because I'm super flexible. And so when I found out that there was a competition, I went over to my coach and I was like, can I do it? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, but do you think I could do it? Like, am I that level? Like, can I do that? And he was like, yeah, just sign up. And I went in the office and I signed up and I had this little team experience. We were all there and the gym, and then it was in Riverside. So we drove like almost 2 hours, I think, to the, the tournament. And my instructor ended up, competing against Josh Barnett in the gi. It was hilarious. It was like a random fight that happened, but it was a blur for me. I somehow got an armbar in the first round,
Hmm.
but it was really weird. I basically just armbarred someone's mom, uh, and like I was like, all right, cool. And, like they just sort of like funnel you places. Like you go to the bullpen and then there's a mat coordinator and it takes you to your mat and now you're waiting and they're like, they check that's your name. And then, you go to the podium after. And so then I just kept on going and going. And then, the blue belt came on the podium in Vegas because I said, everybody else is getting their blue belts. Where's mine? He said, okay, fine. If you win this tournament, like I'll give it to you on the podium. And I did. And then I went to another gym that was another high level guy, got my purple belt. Went to another high level guy in New York. Um, Surprise, I followed love. And I got my brown belt there. And then I went back to LA, back to that second instructor, Cobria, and I got my black belt. And it was 8 years total. But the fact that I was already about 2 years into my purple belt before I had moved to New York, I remember there was a time that I was like, I'm gonna get my brown belt tonight because I've been purple belt for 3 years and I've placed at all the major tournaments I entered. Like there's no way he can hold me back. And he did. And I was a journalist at the time writing for Gracie Mag, which was like the biggest jiu-jitsu magazine.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up writing an article online about interviewing champions that have students and saying how much, like, just by the way, how much does competition result, weigh in on a promotion decision, like on belts, and so one day I sit next to Marcelo and I'm asking him something unrelated, and he's just like, I know why you wrote that article because I didn't promote you. And I was like, yes, yes. And so
Yes.
and then he was like, I did that because it's kind of like tradition that like the students, if they come from another gym, they're not fully yours until they're there about a year. Everybody's got their kind of,
Mm-hmm.
timeline. And that was the reason. So like I may or may not have gotten it sooner, but I was dedicated to the sport aspect of it. Whereas most people don't actually compete who train, which blew my mind when I first went to a gym because I'm like, then what's the point? Um,
Yeah.
right? Self-defense, all those other things. But at the same time, I'm like, well, what do I have in common with these people if they don't compete? And then you realize like, oh wow, there's community. There's people who really care about you, or like, hey, you weren't at the gym today because it's just part of routine. It's that third space that you go to that is just away from, your stress from your job, your stress from your relationships and all that. So it's nice to just have that place, and those people. But I think I think my journey is pretty standard because they say jiu-jitsu black belts are about 8 to 10 years, which fits, the timeline. But there have been people who excelled, like they would win worlds at like every belt. Like it was wild. And then they would just, well, they're the best in the world. I guess they got to move up. And so they
Yeah.
go and they go through faster. But there's also people who have been blue belts for 10 years too. So, it's very, very
Mm-hmm.
subjective and it depends, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. I love that journey because it it kind of proves that you can learn anything and it doesn't matter what your DNA is. Because you mentioned that your parents, your family weren't into sports, you didn't do any sports or anything like that, and you just kind of went in this blind and just like, hey, like I'm gonna do this, and you excelled at it, and that's groundbreaking, I believe, because you hear all around saying like it's talent, it depends on your genetics, like how you were raised and all that stuff, and like how like all of that, and I've never really believed in that because that's just not how it is. We're not robots. We're not programmed that way. Yeah, obviously genetics may play a factor in it, but
Right.
there's people that I know that who are genetic freaks that aren't athletes anymore or aren't the best at certain things. And it's usually the people that like who just find this and like run with it and find enjoyment in it. With, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, MMA, all of this stuff, and your path to getting your black belt and everything like that, how much of that has influenced you to getting your master's in sports psychology and being where you are now as a mental performance coach?
Yeah, I think I was actually having this conversation with a judo black belt who's also a jiu-jitsu black belt, and he's a coach for judo, and he's got some Olympic hopefuls and whatnot, and we've created a partnership that we're going to start working together. So he understands like the Brazilian side of things, and then because of the judo it's different, it's Japanese, and Japanese,
Mm-hmm.
I think that permeated that culture, where the Brazilian kind of culture permeates Gracie jiu-jitsu really. And so I think that he said it was more academic. So, like, it's like I've had coaches some of them are like, "Yeah, you should get a degree, as like a backup or something." But it also, if you're competing at the highest level and you're going to school, then you're not prioritizing things correctly, and you haven't fully committed to the process. And the reason you lost is because you need to train more, you need to train more, you need to train more. And so I was juggling an undergraduate program that like I hated. Like first I was in psych, then I was in criminology, and then finally I just said, "Fine, English. I'll just do English. I'll write some stories. I'll sit in a circle and be like, I think that line means this." And then I'll just finally get it. So 7 years it took me to get my undergrad. So I was never like a school person. I just wanted to yap to the person next to me. Um I was told to get tested. My mom was told when I was in first grade, no, kindergarten, I think. They said you should get her tested for ADD, which is really interesting considering that would have been like 94. And back then, even today, they still think it's a little boys, thing. So my
Mm-hmm.
mom took me to the pediatrician. Pediatrician was like, "Nah, she's just smart." And then my mom was like, "Look, if she won't nap, just give her some Windex and some towels and have her clean off the tables." And that's what they did. They gave me a job. So I I adapted in that way, or people adapted for me because I was smart, right? There's like certain qualities to me. Like kind of like in jujitsu, you can get away with being morally corrupt if you're good at jujitsu, you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think it went under the radar. So I labeled myself obviously as like not like a school person. I felt like life was better than just sitting there in a GE class going, "Gee, maybe I'll like geology." Maybe I'll try, my mom is like a book nerd. So she's like, "You're going to find out what you want to do. You just got to take a bunch of classes." And I'm like, that's not the real world though, at all. Because I realized that once I was doing the criminology, because I thought sociology was interesting, and profiling and why do people commit crimes. And it's really, it's still kind of the psychology behind it. But I realized everyone wanted to just be cops. And I was like, no, I don't want to go that route. And so I quickly changed. But then I realized like, wait, just because this is like your major, it doesn't mean that it dictates what job you go into. But if there is a path, you have to think about what are the types of people that I'm going to work with? What time am I going to have to wake up in the morning? Is it shift work? Is it salary? Like people don't think about the daily part, the daily ritual, which is really interesting because that fills up your entire day. You could be in your dream
Mm-hmm.
job, but the environment is so shitty, or the constraints, whatever, that are on you are so shitty that you end up not having, it ruins it, right? So, uh, after that, I started when I was 2021. So I graduated 2014 from my undergrad. I went to my master's program 2021. So there was like, I thought I would never do a master's. I thought I would never. Now I'm looking at doctorate because in similar to jujitsu, you don't start jujitsu and go up the belts just to like stop halfway. You get the terminal degree. You get to black belt, right? I achieved that. And I think like, well, if I'm going to be good with this mindset stuff, then maybe I'll get a doctorate and then be beat the final boss of like the dissertation and, publish something, because I think I have a unique experience. Like there's a lot of Olympians turned academics, where they bring practice-based evidence rather than evidence-based practice, or it's both, right? But one has to inform the other. And there's not a lot of work done in combat sports. And so that's why I've taken my lived experience. And I think the reason why I was successful in my program is because a lot of the classes I was able to do with combat sports in mind. Like I had a couple that were like, hey, you might be pigeonholing yourself, with just that demographic. But it helped me interpret things because I'm like, oh my gosh, I've experienced that. Like and like abusive coaching, or the coach athlete relationship, or the self-determination and how people are motivated, and the type of feedback that's given. And I know for a fact that I can compete better based on who's in my corner. I hate that because it's not reliable, it's not sustainable. But the environment itself, even if you don't have any like super high level people, but they actually give you attention, they actually give you positive reinforcement, they actually give you feedback in the moment, like there's skill development happening. I like to say I went to like the Yales and Harvards of jiu-jitsu. First one I walked into, the guy's multiple time world champion from a major team. Then I go to the next guy, and he's a multiple time world champion on a different team. And then under the same banner, that's when I went to New York, and I was under Marcelo Garcia. And it's like, man, like that I sought out the best because I was spoiled living in LA and I had access to it. And I just happened to walk in. And I was like, okay, I guess this is what we're doing now. But I didn't know who he was until someone started being like, dude, you know he's like the Michael Jordan of jiu-jitsu? And I was like, what? And then I'm like looking him up, and I'm like, holy shit. So then I started staying after class when he would tell his stories, because it was like, and then I'd go to tournaments and he'd be coaching me, and I'm like, yeah, it's just my coach. And other people would be like, can I get a picture with you? Like, what did you eat for dinner? What's your workout routine? So it's like, it's interesting. And so I sought that out. So I thought, well, I better be good. I better be good. And I didn't really learn how to learn, but I was in certain environments where my needs weren't necessarily met, but I didn't know that. And so now what I do, I know this is kind of going around, but being able to say that I can do academics gives me power to say, okay, I'm bringing the applied back to the research. So in October, I'll be presenting at the conference for the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. Mouthful. And I'm going to be doing 2 poster sessions. One of them is on building mental toughness through self-compassion in combat sports, which is like, what? Those are like opposite. And then the other one is pre-performance routines, very, very like practical based, because that's the format of what I do with most people when I bring it back to, okay, so how is this going to help you in competition? And then also presenting a 5 slides in 5 minutes. I get the jiu-jitsu portion of how to like meet the needs, basically the mental health needs of these combat sports athletes. So I'm not like the smartest person in the room. I'm not the best there ever was in jiu-jitsu. Like, I mean, I was a gatekeeper maybe. Like like I beat some really good people, but at the same time I had really inconsistent performances. And so if myself now could go back and have like 5 sessions maybe with my former self, like fuck, I could have been good. But it's kind of like when you do research, you end up doing me search. So that's kind of where I'm headed now. And I applied for a professional doctorate program, and I even said psychological safety, self-determination, and how the environment affects performance-based self-esteem, because a lot of it is the pressures and the stress of competing with a name, your gym's name on your back, literally, and having to represent
Hmm.
something. So yeah, athletic identity. Woo.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? Like, but with the whole deep dive that you just went down and just telling your story of everything, um, I was never the greatest student either. I mean, I barely made it through high school. I almost got kicked out of college my first semester in my undergraduate because I'm not diagnosed with ADHD. My wife and I joke like I'm self.
You identify
I
as.
I I identify as, because I'm just like, oh, look, and it's
Hmm.
just like I have all these ideas.
Yep.
And honestly, and like when you hit it right on the head there, where it's like when you're doing research, you're doing me search. And so like as I've started to dive deep into a lot of these theories of like, you hear all about it: ecological dynamics,
Hmm.
ecological psychology, self-determination theory, which you mentioned, nonlinear pedagogy around skill development, or just learning and development in general as a human. Like, really, it made me look back at a lot of things too. And one thing that I really love about what you do, especially with the mindset coaching, mental health aspect of things, and I'm trying to apply a lot of these to cross domain, because when I first learned about all this is when I was in my past life as a sports performance coach, sports scientist. Like, it was siloed in sports performance, and I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm not, I want to break away from that because I'm not in that world anymore. It was very stressful waking up at 4 a.m. every day, and I'm there 12 hours a day. I'm getting reamed by CEOs, coaches, all that stuff. And I'm getting dehumanized and basically shit on because they're like, you have to do it this way. You're the strength coach. I'm the head coach. You
Hmm.
got to do as I say. And I'm like,
The
no.
hierarchy.
So there's the hierarchy behind all of it. So applying this cross domain, not just from sports, but from a community aspect, from a learning aspect, conversational parenting, because I do have a daughter now, and she's gonna be what's today's date? She's gonna be 16 months this
Oh.
month. So, so learning how to parent and how to do this with my friendships and relationships and community, like,
Yep.
and I've been through sometimes mental health as well and everything, and trying to figure out myself that way, and still continuing to do that. Um, I want to dive down into that big gaping pit of mental health and all that stuff, and just really dive deep into that, because you mentioned at the tail end of that, where it's like you're wearing someone's name, you're representing someone. Let's back it up to the community aspect of things.
Hmm.
And I feel like you kind of, where you said that you went from, LA to New York to Niagara, back to, and went through something traumatic, back to LA, and now back to Niagara. You found your tribe, you found your community. How powerful is that for someone?
I used to be really jealous of my friends in other countries that had a lot of support, whether it's their gym or their whole country is behind them or their city is behind them. I don't need to like have my name in the newspaper. It's not for clout, but it's just like, that's our girl. Like, that's our girl. And when you grow up in LA and like there's like celebrities that are like in my school and like classes and stuff, and it's like, and I also had kind of a abusive, narcissistic dad at home who made you feel like shit. So it was just like I never felt special. I never felt like chosen, you know? So I think it's honestly like that deep. And so I think being the athletic identity aspect as well comes in, because my identity and my self-esteem. I remember reading an article that said, it said people who are more vulnerable to abusive coaching are the ones with low global self-esteem. And so when you don't have a lot of self-esteem, you look for it externally, Um, do you want me to keep it more like on track? Like I'm gonna go on like a whole thing.
Go.
Okay.
Take it, run with it.
Because I mean, like, what part of mental health though, like, are you like more interested in knowing? Because I'll tell you stories.
I honestly, I'm learning more and more about it every day. So
Right.
hit me with it.
Yeah. So mental health was always a big thing. But more so because I struggled and I felt like I was always behind. So I feel like with your athletic identity, when you're building that, it's a big thing to know who you are so that you're not taken advantage of, that you're not, that you know what feedback to take, that you're respecting the right people and the right hierarchy and the sociocultural aspect of it. But when you have people, people go to jujitsu because they feel seen. It is like most people who come to jujitsu have trauma. They either came from abuse, like a lot of women will come from, SA trauma. It's almost like you want to put on the intake, like, what's your damage and who hurt you? Like people don't go to combat sports because, I mean, people do obviously, and they're healthy and they're neurotypical or whatever. But a lot of us come from troubled pasts. And so um, when you have people that allow you to just exist as you are, it's nice. And with jujitsu, you are so intimate with the people you train with. You swap sweat. You are in these positions that are, just I don't even know you, and we're just gonna, rub chests together and stuff. Um, and so you build this bond where this person has seen you at your most vulnerable. Because if you try, we will fail. And as you try, you're going to make stupid faces. And as you try, you're going to look like an idiot. And you're going to feel like an idiot. And you're also going to get scared. And you're going to get claustrophobic, maybe. Or you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. How do I get out of here? Or I thought my limb was attached to my body. Because, you're learning all of these things. And so the environment really matters. But you see each other in such a way, and such a clear see through, because you can't lie. You can't say, I'm this, and then go out there and you're clearly not. So the
Mm-hmm.
collective is a really big thing for mental health, because these people will check in on you. And I used to say this to people because I started a nonprofit in 2016 called Submit the Stigma. And because the mental health issue in jiu-jitsu and people not wanting to get help and having the stigma against like the mental toughness, but I would do seminars
Mm-hmm.
and I would never want to make it all about like mental health, but I'd always give this little chat at the end where I'd say, look, check in on your training partners, because someone might be feeling like shit and not going to training. And if you just check in and go, hey man, where's my partner at? Hey, I wanted to train tonight. Oh, are you training tomorrow? Like, I'm like, even if you're just doing it for selfish reasons because you want your partner to train with, it's still relevant, because you're still going to make that person feel seen and validated for just being human.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of this sacred space that gets poisoned a lot by ego.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard for me to be like,
I
it's great. Jiu-jitsu's for everyone, because it depends on what gym you walk into. And the hierarchy of jiu-jitsu says that white belts are the lowest totem pole. And so there was this campaign, or kind of like a meme joke thing that would go around back in the day that was like, hey, white belts are people too. And it's like, it's kind of sad that we have to remind you that like we're all human, right?
mm-hmm.
But there are still things that we don't show. Like there are gyms where, criminals, maybe felons even, I don't know, are training with cops, like different political stances, different, right? You keep it kind of separate, and that's the beauty of it. So it is this sacred thing, and there's a lot of idioms and stuff like leave your ego off the mat. Like when you bow on the mat, like leave everything behind. It's just jujitsu, and it's like, all right, that's really hard to do, but I'll try. It depends on how
Mm-hmm.
interesting this class is. It's up to you. But generally, community in jiu-jitsu is what brings people together and what keeps them coming. But it's hard to say when it's like an unregulated sport and we don't have any reporting structure. We don't have really safe sport. We don't have any of that for people keep people in check in regards of like lineage and other stuff that happens. It gets a little culty.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. As someone who's, on the outside looking in and not part of, the jiu-jitsu martial arts community. I mean, I don't know, you could say that I am part of it since I'm, a lot of my following is from that and I'm talking with people who are part of that, but I haven't practiced it myself and haven't involved in it, but someday in the future, someday in the future, I want to, because it's interesting to me. But what you touched on is like feeling safe and seen is something that like with this, and I'm getting this from, absorbing that in from many different viewpoints of like seeing different people, how they practice or how they coach and how they go through things. Actually, one conversation that I had on number 4 of episode of my podcast with Kristen Schweizer. And funny enough, she's a equestrian professional. So I've had martial arts people and people who are equestrian professionals on my podcast.
All crazy people.
It's kind of funny. I know, right? I know. But one thing that she said, and she talks about this all the time, and this is what really sticks with me, is people just want to be safe, seen, and soothed. And it still sticks with me today. And that's kind of what helped. And looking back at when I was a strength and conditioning coach in general, like why I was successful in wherever I went was because I did that. And this right here is, I think many people outside of this community of martial arts can take from, because it's integrated in it. Like you said, you got people from many different backgrounds. Like you said, could be felons working with cops or those coming from trauma and all that stuff. And they're all within, bare level. You're getting very intimate. You're in compromised positions, all of that. You've seen them at your best and worst, all of that. And it's a learning opportunity. And just also, it's a place where you feel safe, seen, and soothed. And it could be the only place that you get that. And that's what I love about all of this and what you just said. And I think it ties so much into, mental health and stuff like that. Because I talked with Lauren and Alex Zerhake, and I came across them, and they're trauma-based, trauma-informed coaches, and they're great humans. I love them. And I honestly, I dove into that, and I'm just like, that makes so much sense, because we all have our own baggage. We have, or not baggage as a wrong term, but like we're bringing something to this table that we've been through. And and this ties so well into, these theories of skill acquisition. And I mean, there's a lot that goes in. So I call it the whole umbrella that a lot of people don't, I feel like, and that's just my perspective, I could be wrong, that this plays into the psychological, the mental health aspect of just being a human. And like you mentioned too, like saying that there's this campaign of like white belts are people too. Like, I think there's a lot to unpack, honestly, from all of what you just said. And so it's tough. And I feel like this is just something that people need to understand now in today's world. And I think it is getting better, but it's people in like corporations, organizations, coaching, even at the highest level here, as you know, like the NFL, NBA, all that stuff, like there's a hierarchy. But I feel like I feel like the most successful organizations or businesses, whatever you want to call it, teams, encompass that safe, seen, and soothed mentality without even knowing it.
It's psychological safety, right? Like Amy Edmonds.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, is the big one. But that's for like HR. And that's, she kind of bases it off of, your level of being able to take interpersonal risk taking. And it changes for jiu-jitsu, because if you apply it, it's like, we're always risk taking. I am risking my limbs every time I go out in a competition. I mean, people get freak accident hurt all the time. I don't want to deter you, but it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Nope.
it's not uncommon for someone to be like, yeah, I got an ACL reconstruction, or yeah, I had to get this reattached, or, it's like, that's part of it. There's real risks. So that's why I work a lot with acceptance and commitment therapy, just because it's, yeah, like you're going to get injured. You might get humiliated. You might get choked within 30 seconds. Like that's the risk you're going to have to take. So it's less about making things safe to take risks, because it's kind of like as soon as you committed and you're bought in to jiu-jitsu, risk is just part of the game. No risk, no reward,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like even in striking,
Yep.
if my hands are out doing something, trying to make, I'm already exposed. Like there's no way to stay completely safe. There's no risk-free way
Mm-mm.
of gaining success in this world. So that's why it changes a little bit. Instead, it's we're doing something that is unsafe. It's like people don't even realize it because they're normal social norms, and you just like normalize that, like, yeah, we choke each other and we have a safe word, which is tap,
Mm-hmm.
and like you can tap the person's hands. You could tap your foot on the mat and hopefully they see it. There has been a case where there was a multiple time world champion female in a final at Worlds, and she was getting choked, but the ref and nobody could see because the girl was over her and she was down. She was being choked while out for a long time, and it traumatized her
Oh,
to a
wow.
point where she couldn't even do jiu-jitsu and had to go to therapy, and now she's back and it's amazing. But like, that's the scary part. That's the risk. She could have become brain dead, right? So there is
Mm-hmm.
real risk. But psychological safety is, inclusive, which is, hey, you're a human, not is this a good training partner for my students? Or is this guy even any good? Like, is he going to be good training for me? Or does he even, like, I don't know, like, does he even lift? Like, you're judging that person. Or if you're the business owner, you might look like, well, are they going to sign up for a membership? Like, what's their job? Like, what do you do for a living? Like, almost like screening
Mm-hmm.
them. So that's very common. And then there's like kind of like a division between like the hobbyists versus the competitors and whatnot. So there's this level of exclusion that is just inherent to this normal hierarchical society, and that any gym has. It's like an ecosystem there. But there's also learning safety, which is the ability to make mistakes. And obviously, if you don't know how to do something, like you're gonna do it wrong. And hopefully, either a coach walking around, or your training partner is going to correct you. But oftentimes I'll ask a question to my clients. I'll say, okay, so if you're struggling with a move and your instructor comes over, are you more of like, oh, thank God you're here, I have so many questions? Or is it trying to prove that you have the ability and like, oh no, like I got it, right? Like, because there's a difference between developing ability and demonstrating it, right? And so that
Mm-hmm.
relationship or that status, social status or whatever, how it always influences on whether someone's able to do the thing. Challenger safety, and contribution safety. So can they, like, if a blue belt says to a brown belt, oh yeah, I do the choke this way, like a very traditional kind of gym that reinforces like, oh, I'm a higher belt, so I'm more worthy of a human being than you are. It's like, what do you know? You're a blue belt. I'm a brown belt. Like, how dare you? Like, there's even traditional things of like, you can't ask a higher belt to roll. Like you have to be like granted permission to like roll with them. There's a lot of
Hmm.
different types of things that don't go well with psychological safety. And there's a lot of humor involved, which I am notoriously like, I will be sarcastic. And if people aren't catching it, then I sound really fucking rude, which is awful. Cause like, I love making the joke, if there's an uke, we call it, like the person that's demonstrating the move needs a body, right? So that guy, like I might, the coach might say, yeah, so sometimes when he does this and he doesn't do it, I'm like, what an idiot. And like, I think it's funny because it's like, like, I don't know, it sounds like a Rob Schneider movie or something. But
You let your intrusive thoughts out.
yes, yes, it's so funny. And I don't mean it by any means. I mean it
Yeah.
like how dare, yeah, it's like one level above, the satire and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we also have a lot of neurodivergent, and a lot of neurodivergent people can't actually understand sarcasm. So it's really not a great tool for some things. But if you are always made fun of for, asking a stupid question, or, like, oh, he never pays attention, or, oh, he never gets the move right, like he's whatever, that can be really harmful to someone's
Mm-hmm.
psyche in terms of their level of competence, which is a basic psychological need. Everybody needs to feel that their efforts are worth something, that they have
Yeah.
meaning, that they're making progress no matter how slow, right? And it's the coach's job to let them know that. But also, belonging being a psychological need is like, obviously, so you can feel very excluded if, oh, every time I ask that guy to roll, he says no, he ducks me every time, and I don't know why. Like, there's all these different things. So when I work with clients, it ends up being a really like interpersonal aspect of like, well, I don't know how to talk to my coach about this. Or whenever I roll with her, like, I don't go hard, but I know I need to, but I'm afraid of looking like a bitch. And, oh, I really want to know how close I am to my next belt, but like, you're not supposed to ask. Like, it's like a no-no. You're not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
ask about your belt. You're just supposed to be given it when you deserve it. And you're supposed to trust your coach. So I've realized that I've gravitated a lot towards that socio-cultural, biopsychosocial, model where it's never just one thing. It's never just
Mm-hmm.
one thing. I need to know whether my client is going through a breakup or they just lost their job, because if we're sitting here talking about like, okay, so when you're in the bullpen, you're going to listen to this music and you're going to do this. And if you're not fully engaged, or, I might even say, and I had said this before to a client who got injured days before she competed. And I'm like, look, it's an option not to compete. Like, I know you flew out there, but if we're thinking sustainable and long-term and mental health wise, you could get more damage and then you're out of worlds and then you can't even train. Right. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I walk that line of therapy. There's a lot, like all of my basics are under counseling theory. So it's very similar, but licensure and legalities is like, I can't use that, right? Because I have a certification, not a licensure. But, you know, but the level of, humanness that is required to be a performance coach is just not talked about. That you think
Mm-mm.
that because you only get those people when they're in their athletic role, that you can ask whatever you need of them and they will provide, regardless, and if they can't stop thinking about a girl, or if they're, too tired because they ate something shitty the night before, like, are you going to punish them? Like, or are you going to just reinforce better behavior and actually be a safe
Mm-hmm.
place for that person to speak honestly? Because if you're a coach and your athletes are lying to you, it's a good sign that you're not very psychologically safe.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. And I guess I'm trying to I look at it as calibration, where it's just like you fail, you got to recalibrate, try to
It's
be
data.
successful. So right now, where I'm trying to calibrate where I want to go, because you unpacked a lot of things. So I think one where I want to start is you talk about this community of, jiu-jitsu, martial arts, and all this, and what you do like with your clients is like failure is gonna happen.
Mhm.
And I feel like failure and making mistakes is demonized. And I could be wrong, but that's just my perspective. And growing up, I felt that. Like, for me personally, like mentally, and my wife knows this, like I'm so self-critical and I self-destruct.
Mhm.
So all that, whenever I make a mistake, I'm like, oh, I fucked up,
Mhm.
or I'm just being a little bitch or something
Mhm.
like that. And that's just like, and that's where like a lot of this, like, failures are going to happen, and we can't demonize it because that's how we learn. And I bring to the example of like my daughter. I like, how did she learn to walk? How did she learn to crawl? She made so many mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she fell down over and over and over again. What did she think? She probably thought, it's just play. Oh, I'm learning. I'm figuring this out. Oh, this works. She's organically
She's not in a rush.
calibrating. Exactly. Exactly. And like, as a proud parent, like, she's excelling. She's learning quite a bit. She's very freaking tall. We just had her 15-month appointment, and she's in the 99th percentile for her height, and she's tall for a 15-month-old, which is crazy. But like, I'm so proud of like her. She's figuring things out. She's starting to formulate words and stuff. But like, my wife and I, we are not like, oh, you have to be this way, this model, and like not demonizing mistakes, because it's going to happen. It's like, oh, if she does something that we don't want her to do, but like, oh, okay, let's try this, like all that stuff. And like, that's where I'm trying to do. And I'm learning a lot more about myself, like, as I went through, because I have my own trauma of like, when I was an athlete, I had to do things perfect. And when I made a mistake or said something wrong, I get punished or something of that nature. And
You
all that.
internalized it.
So yeah, exactly. And it's even like I mentioned today, like, I'm so self-deprecating whenever I make a mistake. And that's just something, that's a skill that I'm trying to work at and like apply a lot of this to. And it's like, I'm going to make mistakes from now because it's foreign to me. I think what I'm pulling away from your message and a lot of other things too is just like, this community aspect to jiu-jitsu and just martial arts in general. Like, it opens you up to fail, and it allows you to learn from that. And it does it in a, like what you're saying, it depends on also like what gym or what building you're in and what coach you get, but allows for that psychological safety to happen. And it restructures the brain in a way that's like, okay, I've got choked out when I tried this because it left me vulnerable, and it allows you to be vulnerable too, psychologically. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to recalibrate. And it's like, oh, I remember this. The brain isn't like a computer and it remembers it. It's like your body instinctually, oh, I don't want to try this. That's my perspective of it. Again, I could be completely wrong because I'm so far out of it. But like, that's so powerful. And I think a lot of coaches, parents, bosses, managers, whomever is like in
your ear,
I guess global, in your ear, needs to hear this, that failure is okay. And being able to be in an environment where you know you're safe and you're seen, but you're allowed to make those mistakes, that you're gonna surpass your peers who are just so like gung-ho, this is the way how I do things and all that.
The big part of perfectionism is that you are striving for something that doesn't exist, but not allowing yourself to see that. And, aim for the moon, land amongst the stars, is very hard, because that person might look at it and go, I did my best and I'm still not good enough. I mean, I've been there. And it's almost like, well, then there's self-handicapping. Well, John Jones does that because he goes, if I do lose, which he never does, if I do lose, I have something to fall back on, that I know it wasn't because of my lack of skill. I know it wasn't because I didn't try. Well, no, it'd be like, because he didn't try, and I didn't give full effort. Giving full effort is a liability, because if you give full effort and you feel that you have nothing else to give, and you're still not, hitting this imaginary, mark, whether it's external or internal, there's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain involved. And that's why acceptance. I have to accept that my limbs are only so long, and that certain moves are going to be a little bit harder for me. If I'm stubborn about it, I can find a way to adapt, and I might even create a new move in the process. But adaptation is the thing. So, the heavy judging is shame oriented, right? Like, it's all internalized shame. Let me shame myself before someone else can. There's a Hey Arnold episode I reference all the time that no one has ever seen, but it's when he's going to get beat up by Harold the bully. And it's this whole thing, and Helga's like, you're going to die. And he's like freaking out. And so he comes up with this plan, and they're all in they're all in the street in a group, and he shows up with a boombox, and he puts the boombox down, and he puts the song on and starts like bouncing up and down, and it's like, don't hit me, I'll hit me. And he starts, and they all go, he's crazy. And then they leave and they all run away. And then now they don't want, and he saves himself from getting beat up. And it's kind of like people who use a lot of self-deprecating humor. It's trying to like be hidden, but it does tell a lot about how they feel about themselves. And so it always comes back to, obviously, my role is like, okay, athletic identity, we're performance-based, but the self and your own values. And so the critic is important. The critic is important. The critic is the one that helps you be disciplined. It might motivate you. The critic troubleshoots, right? But the critic gets really loud. And that's when I help people develop their inner coach, which is the soothing part. And so this is where I get to the antidote of perfectionism is self-compassion. And imagine telling Mike Tyson about self-compassion. It'd be really funny to hear him actually pronounce it, but like
it would be. I can just hear
right?
it already. Him trying to say that,
right? And he's like, I punch people in the face for a living. What the fuck do I need self-compassion for? Like,
yeah.
It doesn't make sense. And that's where I'm like, whoa, you don't even understand that self-compassion is almost like cloning yourself and recognizing your own suffering, not pitying yourself, because that's another fine line, but recognizing, wow, that was really hard. Right? Because we don't judge the people that we care about in that way. We take their feelings into perspective. We take the construct, whatever constraints they're under, like we will let our loved ones, yell at us sometimes if we know that it's because they just had a really, really stressful day, and that's whatever, or we'll allow people to express themselves and not take it so personally, right? And so allowing someone to have those things, it's emotional regulation, it's shame resilience, it's my favorite aspect of it is common humanity. Like 50% of people statistically are going to lose their first match, like depending on if there's a bye, whatever. But there might be the most stacked division ever. Maybe a black belt world champion, and he might lose his first match. And that's just statistics, baby. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
So there's a level of like, I'm not alone, and the standards that I am trying to get to, it probably means I got the carrot on the end of the stick, and you're just constantly moving the bar, so you never actually give yourself a pat on the back. That's part of it. But self-compassion, people are resistant to it. They actually called it backdraft, like in firefighting. Like if there's a room that's been shut off and it's sucking all the air for the flames, if you open that door, the flames are just going to because you're introducing all that air. So they poke holes in the roof so that it lets out, That's what happens when you tell someone to be nice to themselves and they've been a critic to themselves their whole life. That the critic starts going, oh, now you want to be nice? Like, and it's just this whole, shower arguments back and forth, and you're seesawing, and you're like, I'm not doing it right. And yeah. So usually in small doses. But I do think that self-compassion has a huge place in psychological safety and the ability to connect with yourself in a sport that doesn't usually give a shit about you, unfortunately.
No, I totally agree with you on that. And one thing too, you mentioned about, shooting for the stars, shooting for the moon and landing upon the stars and whatnot. Like in my athletic career, like as a track and field athlete, discus thrower, like I was pretty successful in college and whatnot, but it was kind of instilled into me to, shoot for the moon, reach for the stars. Like I want to be an Olympian. That's how I was raised. And that was my expectation for myself, was like to win every meet, break every record, all that stuff. And anytime I fell short, that's when, and 9 times out of 10, I did fall short. That's something now, like me looking back at it, like that's how I was. I always beat myself up, and like how you were talking about that Hey Arnold episode, like beat myself up before anyone else can beat me up and whatnot. And it took me a little bit because after I graduated, I tried, competing professionally, and try to, make USAs and make the Olympic team and stuff like that. But then I found that acceptance is like, I'm not going to do that. Like I was trying to juggle, one, track and field in the US, like the funding isn't there. Like it's not part of the, big money making sports. Um, and so it's kind of just like, oh, you're training by yourself, and there's a different mentality, but also trying to, start my coaching career and have my family. And like, I got married in 2019. So like right then and there, like trying to figure things out. And I just came to accepting that, and being able to accept, like, this is how it is. This is who I am. Like I took a step back. I stepped away because I was like, I'm not going to do that. Now I have different aspirations. I want to kind of twist that into, I've heard about it as like a coach, and you talked about it too, like mental toughness and all that. And I want to know, what is mental toughness? How do you teach it? How do you go about it? Like, spill it all out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the traditional mental toughness is, emotional suppression. No matter what obstacle is there, you ignore the negative and you just do the positive, and it's like toxic positivity. It's usually related to masculinity, obviously in the combat sports space. Like, you just walk it off, buddy. And certain emotions are allowed, like anger, but not sadness or crying, right? So it's it's an interesting thing because it's not easy to describe. It was one of our assignments in my program, and I'm like, it's kind of like love. And it's like everybody has their own definition of like what this abstract thing is. So I've taken more of like the resilience route, because resilience you cannot practice unless you've been met with something that is hard, something that challenges you, and something that changes you, right? So resilience is the bouncing back. In order to bounce back, you have to have been bounced forward. I don't know. Like, you have to have gone through something to build it. So what you do, it's like if you had a person living in a bubble, and you could, control everything that goes in there and what they experience, you would add little bits of stress inoculation to build it up, right? To callous the fingers, to callous the mind. But a lot of the times the way that it's taught is not with the human involved. It's more of just like, you are an athlete. And so that ends up not being very sustainable. So you've got people that are really nervous, but they can't tell their coach about it. And then whether it's combat sports or not, like if they say like, hey, I'm nervous, like maybe they're on a team sport and now they get benched, because now the coach is like, no, they're not reliable. They're not confident. I don't want them playing, whatever. I got a record to deal with. The win-loss records are whether I get paid or not, right? So there's a lot of those pressures. But I would say mental flexibility is actually what mental toughness is, because when you are constantly in changing situations, like whether it's a different type of event, or a different rule set, or different gym that you're training at, or in the middle of a match, it's the difference between a sleeve grip and a collar grip, right? There are things that change. So the variables are constantly changing. It's so dynamic and complex that there's not one mental model or conceptual framework that you can use. It is whatever is in front of you, and you have no idea what that person's going to do, even if you fought them 4 times. So you can't necessarily anticipate things. So that's why mental toughness ends up being part of the acceptance and commitment therapy hexaflex on psychological flexibility, which is being values driven so that you're anchored in who you are and committing to those values with those actions. Like, how are you enacting them, so that no matter what issues you go through, you know that this is my core and I still have these things that I know about myself that are unchanging, right? Like, I'm not going to make or break my career with one fight, although it may feel that way. And so there's also this aspect of being able to see that you are either in it or you're a 30,000 foot view, right? We always think about like rational brain versus like emotional brain or whatever. It's really the ability to take both and kind of like consider both. Logically, this, but I feel this way. And when you're in it, it can be really hard to have a 30,000 foot view, which is why we go to a coach, we go to a friend, we go to someone who can give a different perspective. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
mental toughness is the ability to handle hard shit, like in basically. But the way that you do it, and considering athletic identity and psychological safety and all these topics we've been talking about, they all have to be included, because the shortcut way is to just be like, hey, you suck, get better. And now like they're going to burn out. They're going to overtrain. They might win. They might actually have like an awesome career, but then afterwards they're nobody, and that's a huge transition. So I try
Mm-hmm.
not to let people burn their candle at both ends without some sort of plan or recognition of recovery, because striving to be mentally tough is not ignoring the pain. It's not acting like negativity is contagious. It's not, oh, we can't talk about how we're really feeling because that might disrupt the vibe or whatever. It's about knowing yourself and knowing what you are capable of and sticking to that. And yet the outwardly mental toughness is, that. And it's
Mm-hmm.
really not. It's an internal job. It's not an outside thing. So usually, as we know, the guys with the biggest trucks. But the guy that's got like, the one that's showboating and stuff, yeah, they might be good, but it's superficial, and you can tell that they're insecure. And they don't have their core values really understood.
No, I totally agree with you about that. Like, yeah, no, mental toughness is a vague topic because, like you mentioned, like what love is, like you have your different definitions of it, and usually like you just hit it right on the head. Like it's that masculinity, be tough, like show no emotion. And I like, it's how I was taught.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I feel like a lot of people are taught, and it's still, I feel like, not institutionalized, but it's taught. It's within how school systems are,
Yep.
how jobs are, and I feel like it's just dehumanizing at some point because like
Mm-hmm.
it's part of us. It's part of our DNA. And I think, and again, rooting it back to, this learning and development aspect of just skill and just humans, because everything we do is a skill in general. Um, and these theories and ideas that like I've mentioned before, because it's not predictable. You're all constantly doing something different. And like how you mentioned, you may be going against the same person 4 times, but they're going to do something different every single time. And like how you're going to accept or be in like from a collar grip versus a different kind of grip, all that, like it's being flexible and being adaptable, being always constantly
Mm-hmm.
recalibrating to the moment. And I feel like that's brushed off quite a bit in how today is. And like I'm just kind of like like a revelation right now. I'm going through it right now as we're doing this and thinking and all that stuff. But I guess you're kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're kind of in that coaching role now, right?
Yeah, I have access to athletes.
Okay. So now how do you teach this? How do you coach this, and how do you do this and with those athletes?
So that's what I'm still like. There's not a lot of research on the applied. And if there is, it's pretty basic. And it's like, yeah, this self talk works for this, soccer team or something. So even the combat sports literature is pretty not there. So I have the creativity and the luxury of being able to develop my own interventions based off of frameworks. But what it looks like is going to be completely dependent upon the level of that person, the dedication and commitment level of that person. Whether I'm coaching them jujitsu or if I'm coaching them just for mindset, I always dabble both. Like I'll still dive deep in those conversations of like technical battles and like why did you choose that technique over this one? You know, because that's still the mental aspect. But I can talk in those technical terms because of my knowledge and experience. But then when I'm teaching jujitsu, I'm also giving them the conceptual thing. I'm like, because like I'll give us something like sometimes if you're hanging on someone, we call it a collar tie, right? Like a hand behind their head and you're holding them down, right? If I commit myself too much, I compromise my own stability that when they move backwards, I go with them. And now now I'm making myself vulnerable to attack because I'm off balanced versus holding tight and then feeling them move and choosing to let go rather than giving yourself away. And I'm like, it's like relationships. You have to love yourself, and I'll always kind of like bring it back to that understanding because the mental model and how they're thinking about it, it's not just chess for humans. It's not. It's not I go, you go, I go, you go. We have time to think. It's chaos. And the things that you are learning in isolation, they don't look that way when rolling. Sparring looks a lot different. It is. It's very, very messy. And you're not just passing a guard, you're also defending attacks and preventing yourself from getting swept over. So like you're multitasking like the whole time. And what you focus on, like when someone takes your back, if they put the hooks in the legs, you might want to be like, oh no, I don't want that. But then it opens up your neck. And now you're like, but wait, now I'm, and so it's kind of trying to prioritize, and it's a constant, there's no one right answer. When I teach a technique, it's not, this is the way. So the way that I like to teach is saying, this is one way. This is one way. Try it out. Fuck around, find out. Try it out. Let me know what you think. If you don't like it, we can adapt it. We can figure it out. But this is one piece of the puzzle. Because you get new people and they have no idea, well, how did I even get to this, snapshot of a roll? How did I get here? Well, I would have had to pass their guard. Well, white belts aren't very good at passing guard yet. So they're never going to be able to try the side control because they have to earn side control in order to even get into that position. So like, there's a lot of times when people are like, they're teaching these little snapshots of techniques without describing what comes before and after and giving the big picture. So I always try to give, like I said, when you're in it and the feelings and the 30,000 foot view, I kind of do it both. Like when you're in this position, this is your goal. This is where you probably want to go. And these are the barriers. And this is why we do it. So usually I talk a lot when I teach and some people don't like that, but I'm always trying to give like the understanding to where you're not regurgitating or memorizing something. It's a concept that you can now fill. Well, I have to, get notes to you. Well, I could either handwrite it and then take a picture of it. I could fax it. I could scan it. I could type it directly on the computer. I could text it to you. Right? All I give a shit about is that you give me the information. I don't care. I don't care what form it's in. Just give me the information. I don't care how you tap that person. A tap's a tap, baby. Like, get her done kind of thing. So there's this refined, smooth, calculated, methodical aspect of jiu-jitsu. And then there's just the dog. And if you have direction but no intensity, or you have intensity but no direction, you need both, right? So we need both. There's a time to be a noodle and there's a time to be a hammer. And you just got to feel it and figure it out because there's no perfect roadmap.
No, I agree. There's all roads lead to Rome. Doesn't matter which road you take.
Yeah, forgot about that one.
It's also it's a constant dance between, like you said, being a noodle, being a hammer. It's constant dance and feeling out your partner and feeling when to give, when to not, and all that stuff. That's beautiful. Well, is there anything else? Any other deep dives? Any other rabbit holes you would love to go down?
I feel like we would need extra episodes for that, but
and we can for sure set that up.
I think that, like, I always like to think of like a take home message, which I believe is more about this time, I guess, like psychological safety and whatnot. In a lot of especially hierarchical societies, like, you don't have a say. Like, it's just like you're a blue belt, or you're a rookie, or you're not on varsity, or you're not a team captain, or whatever is stopping you in terms of the status. So there's a lot of self-advocating involved and being able to meet your needs, but not knowing what those needs are. And so figuring out what do you need? Do you need connection? Do you need validation? How do you like your feedback? Do you need to have a more alone time? Do you want to practice more with people? Do you need to be in a group? Like, I realized recently I want to go back to CrossFit because I like collective suffering. I don't want to work out alone. Um, like, you need to, like, the same way that I learned that I'm going to take a long time to read a research article. It's just going to take me a while because it needs to simmer, and I need to write my little notes about it, and I need to figure out where it fits in my, what I already think. And so that's how I got through my program. But understanding your own needs and then figuring out how to meet them within the title and position that you are currently in is great. I'm all for the collective. Lean on people. Asking for help is a skill just as much as accepting help is a skill. But figure out what those needs are, and then you can decide if they're being met or not. Because if you're not performing well, it might be your environment. If you're not performing well, it might be your process. It might be both. It might be a belief that you've internalized that, oh, I'm not good at that. I don't even try. So there's a lot of reasons there are mental blocks, but I feel like in terms of like self-actualization, if I give like the self-help aspect, look at what you need, look at your environment, and if you're getting it, and then try to find tweaks to make sure that you get them. Is probably the easiest way to say it.
Love it. Love it. Well, Erin, where can people find you?
Instagram or my website, so erinherle.com, and my username is Erin Herle, or Train Ya Mind, train YA Mind. And that's my other like Instagram handle if you want to see more of the scientific stuff. But if you want to see my face, go go on my regular Instagram. And that's usually where you can find me. At unfortunately most hours of the day.
No, same here, same here. Well, Erin, I appreciate you sitting down, chit chatting with me, shooting the shit, going down a lot of different rabbit
Hmm.
holes and deep dives and whatnot. And for sure, there's going to be more episodes between us, as you kind of just foreshadowed a
Yes.
little bit. But no, I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it too.